Go ahead, Manu.
Sure. Namaste and greetings. I, Neenu, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for week 7 of our 2-month immersive training course on understanding the nuances of climate change in the Indian subcontinent. I welcome you all to this transformative journey exploring sustainable, resilient, and innovative responses to our current climate challenges. The chair for the program is Ms. Bhargavi Rao, independent researcher and educator, environment activist, Bengaluru, visiting senior fellow honorary at IMPRI. The expert conducting this are Professor Biswas, Mr. Arjuna Seneviratne, and the conveners for the session are Mr. Tikendra Singh Panwarji, Dr. Simi Mehtaji, and Dr. Arjun Kumarji. Proceeding further, we thank everyone for joining us today and we appreciate your dedication in investing your time, energy, and commitment to gaining a profound understanding of climate change dynamics and development responses. We have also shared course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to state the housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your remarks are precise and your questions are precise. Refrain from making any general comments in the question to save time. I would like to invite the chair for their opening remarks. Welcome and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neenu. And I would like to thank everybody at IMPRI for again giving me this wonderful opportunity to be the chair for over the last so many weeks now. It's been a great learning journey, and we've completed so many sessions where it is wonderful to see that every session on a Saturday is something that is building on to the earlier week session. So today's session happens to be the Himalayan ecosystems, challenges and strategies in a changing climate. And the second session is about climate change and water security in the Indian Ocean region. Given that in the earlier sessions, we've already understood now what the National Action Plan for Climate Change is and how one of the sub-missions of the NAPCC is also about the National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, and there's also the National Water Mission. So it kind of opens these doors and windows to understand deeper issues and immerse ourselves in understanding these true nuances of how climate change is impacting, what the strategies are, and what is the local action there that is helping understand and build the capabilities and adaptations and the resilience. So without wasting a time, I would like to thank our speakers for the day, and over to our speakers. Thank you so much. I will look forward to the Q&A session and the wonderful interaction that we have as always. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. For our first session, I am delighted to invite Professor Biswas, Professor and Head, Department of Forestry, Graduate Institute of Biomedical and Natural Sciences, Dehradun, Uttarakhand, visiting Professor Honorary, IMPRI, for his address on Himalayan ecosystem, challenges and strategies in changing climate. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Are you able to see my slides? Hello? आप क्या मेरे presentation देख पा रहे हैं?
Sir, you will have to share again. Share वाले button पे एक बार फिर से, sir.
Okay. To bear with me.
Sir, share screen
Yeah.
button.
Wait a minute, I'm not able to open it here.
So you can come back to Zoom again.
And now share the screen.
Yes.
Give me a moment. Here I share. We'll be able to see now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thankful to IMPRI for giving me yet another opportunity to be with you on the important topic. This and I'm happy that this is very much close to my working area in Himalayas and for the Himalayas. And most interesting thing I must tell you that I have been working since 1973 in Himalayas. In fact, my PhD was on inventarialization of the biological diversity of 2/3 part of Uttarakhand. And from there, I picked up for 10 years and got in Northeast and Arunachal Pradesh to Meghalaya and the areas supporting Myanmar. They were all with this part of the great mountain system of the world. If you are able to see here, they have a rich, diverse history, spanning millions of years. And I must tell you that whatever we do talk about the climate change, but so much fast it has been changing. It was never before. And this is, I would say, superimposed with the geological history of Himalayas, more than 50 million years. And you can see the Indian tectonic plate collided with the Eurasian plate forming the Himalayan mountain range. And continuous plate, as you can see here, this became the most important part of containing the vegetation and flora and fauna, and that was the reason we find the Himalayan region is one of the most important component of this. Whereas the ancient civilization in 1000 BCE to 500 current era, and even Indus Valley civilization in Himalayan foothills. Vedas, ancient Hindu scriptures were written in Himalayas. We do know all about this. Buddhism emerged in the Himalayas, with the Lambari being the birthplace of Gautam Buddha. Now, as we see here, I think I have made this. Now, this is very much important here. That's what I like to talk to you about the immediate concern. You can see here that how Om, the Om Parvat, known from Uttarakhand adjoining Himalayan region, as in the snow which we used to just melted away, and the next one, and that has become a very much important topic of the Uttarakhand government too, because what matters. So Om has in English here, but whereas Om has got its meaning, and the various kingdoms and empires such as the Kushans and Guptas, Mughals ruled the Himalayan region, even from the education point of view, to Taxila in Afghanistan that we used to become a most important center of education where Kotil there, Chanakya was the greatest teacher, known for Indian medium very much. And then you see that Hinduism was and Buddhism and Jainism all coexisted and influenced each other in this Himalayan region outside above the Om. And then came the colonial it, on the other that George Everest, the explorer, and that too in this part. So you can see how the climate was very much concerned from geology to biodiversity to climate. And then we see British East India Company established trade and political control. Himalayas became a popular destination for mountaineering. I'm speaking to you from a point from where not even 1 kilometer away from the point where in 1807, Gurkha Nepalis who ruled Dehradun and Uttarakhand, they had a big conflict with the British Army, and although Khas were defeated, but they, made a point of the convention that they will always be appreciated, and there is a monument respect of those who fought. But since 1807, Dehradun, which was sold about not even less than 2,000 rupees to king of Garhwal Himalaya, and that was the beginning of the area that became, although it became the seat for the education. But at the same time, as you can see here, this became a popular destination for mountaineering and trekking. Then, as you can see, the modern era started with the current era, 1947, and Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan gained independence. Himalayas faced environmental challenges such as forestation, pollution, and sustainable tourism conservation efforts and climate change awareness grew, as you can see, of those pictures that I have put. So all positive and negative components here. Then, as you can see here, the cultural and spiritual significance of mountain or Himalayan mountain ecosystem raised can consider separated. I've already told to you, and the Kailash monks over the Tikhonovaya, and this became one of the most important part besides Amarnath in Jammu and Kashmir region. And they want me to find the remnants of those glorious past with the glaciers. Then Himalaya has been home to various indigenous communities with unique cultures and traditions. You'll find here IKH Himalayan region that extends to about 3,400 detail of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bhutan, China, Bangladesh, Myanmar. Here, source of 10 major Asian rivers, Indus, Ganga, and 1.3 billion people directly depend upon IKH region and the ecosystem in general, for irrigation, power, and drinking water. Then you can see here most important climate that I have seen from pre-Holocene to period and post-period, and you can see here that shows one here coming up by large areas. Then Karakoram with highly varied mountains, and then zone 3, northwest, and zone 4 east of Himalayas. So all covered conditions. Now coming to the next important component, that is with warm phase. The warm phase and I would say climate change. That was warmer with vegetation and increased vegetation. Vegetation increased several times. And 5,000, 2,000 ago, the climate cooled with expanded glaciers and reduced vegetation. And after cool phase came the period of little ice age. And this becomes one of the most important component where a period of cooling with glacial advances and increased snowfall. So the climate went on changing it, but what is happening presently different by time, speed, the region, and then came what you can see here, modern warming, 1852 present, glacial retreat, increased temperature, rapid warming, change precipitation patterns, as you can see here, total flow by flow components, given by those et al. And this is a contribution to total flow by glacier melt, then the snowfall, and then rainfall for major stream during the reference period. So this became is warmed by 0.1.2 rapid warming at higher elevations. But the most disturbing aspect that comes here, that is, as you can see here, it is accelerated, melted, and impacts on water resources. So variability as extreme events have occurred, and this is typical of Himalayan region we do see here. And then you'll find here temperature increase, and as you can see here, the projected warming 1.32, and in 2050 it could be 3.5 to 6.0 by 29 will increase. So when the climate changes, all the factors, right from the pollination biology to the fecundity of insects and even the gregarious growth of weeds, that also increase with this. And this becomes one of the most important issue, and the impact comes on the water resources and ecosystem in large. And then you find several of the ecosystems become vulnerable, and as you can see here, changes in temperature and precipitation patterns alter species, composition, and ecosystem function. And then there is a shift in the tree species and distribution, and increase this of wildfires in the case of the temperate forest. And what we find is the most important component that I'd like to speak here. That you can, although changes in relative mating is not new, but it's doing it. But human migration becomes one of the most important component here. Like this here, you can see here, this is a big village along in Uttarakhand, very close to Niti Pass or Niti village, and where this is called um, Ghost village. Although there are about 350 families, but as such, the whole village has become ghost village because of the migration. And one of the reasons, of course, they do find a better pasture while migrating to cities and better townships. But another cause is there that due to change in the climate, certain crops and it's a perpetual supply of water that also matters with it. The social and economic pressures leading to migration conflict. And what I learned that the numbers of such ghost villages, people will not be there, that will reach to 2000 by the maybe more by the end of this decade. Presently, in Uttarakhand, Himalaya, 1048 with the last figure of the state government, and the first village which is located at 658 meter above sea level, and that is put under demographic vacuum. And the name of the village, Bhargavi. No one in the whole village, although some attempts are being done to develop that village into ecotourism and all. Of course, during the Corona period, several of our youth came back to several of those villages, but it did not work to that extent, I would say. And then comes the most important component of my topic is bioindicators of climate change resilience. And this is one of the components that I'm working upon, that is a species that can detect and respond to changes, serving as indicators of ecosystem resilience to climate change. As you see here, there has been monitoring assessment of resilience to climate change for conservation and management strategies. One of the bioindicators that I do take up in studies, that is altered migration patterns, population declines in case of the migratory birds. And this is, we have got international conservation sites in Dehradun Valley. The migratory birds that I do expect by the end of this September, but there is no sign of it. Besides, there are certain birds which show in detail on the beyond, but they are also not showing like Wakti and all. They have not come here to know. Although the temperature of Dehradun, because of the incessant heat for the past 2 days, has dropped, it is 21 degrees today, but a week ago it was 38. And then changes in community composition of the ocean. But in that also has of the leads. And coming to the next indicator group, that becomes that is how to study the dendrochronology and with the times where the cambrial rings of the trees get mentioned. There was a tree which was more than 800 years old, And counting the 804 links, they've been established that that cedar tree used to be very much common in part of Himalaya, particularly in the western part of Uttarakhand, Himalaya. Then comes the changes in community composition, indicating health and climate change, and lichens. Basic lichens, they're very much important because the growth of the lichens have been since how long they have been growing in the region, and how they have some percent or some more of the quantum of lichens and all types of moss. They all have been understanding about association of lower plants with the climate with a long time. And then, of course, the soil microorganisms that provides a lot of changes in the community compositions. And coming to the next part, that what we need to see, amphibious and other hibernating. And this is one of the most important components. Amphibians also good bio past about 15 years. I am not able to hear the banana pentina sounding when the crop tree frogs and so not. But in some parts of the Himalaya, particularly in Ladakh area, I've come to know that those animals, particularly the rodents, they are coming to on the people eat, and their 30 years of hibernation has reduced because of the impact of the climate change, and it is also one of the bioindication. And then plant invasiveness, insect fecundity and all, and that is what where we to find the how the species gregarious growth of the species have increased in many places. There were some new plants which have not entered into the mountain ecosystem with any trial or error or hit and try, and they are spreading like anything. The most recent is angel trumpet, which is entered here. That was this was introduced for the decorating purpose at the altitude of 3,000 feet above sea level, but it has now come down to 1,500 feet above sea level in the Doon Valley, and the angel trumpet is the one which does not succeed here, particularly also botanically called Brugmansia suaveolens, closer to the Datura and the Datura genus. But what I have been now the pollinators I could find a pollinator, but the seeding is not there. But then how come it is spreading so fast? The bush with the showing flowers. I learned that it has got the invading root system, and but it does not harm the solid by structure, building structures and all. But it is spread by a root system. So if you cut it to system surfaces or the surface, then it comes. So when the landslide is there, down, then slide down, then the system to sprout further. And then another one, this is what we do see in case of some of the species that Himalayan ecosystem. And, all right, we understand about this. So one example that I would like to give you here, Himalayan birch, Petrola italis. This shows that it is shifting its forest because of the impact of the climate change. And I learned that 5 Himachal villages ban entry into Himalayan forest in Pangi region. So there, it is by the distribution and all, particularly I find which are in my PhD area in Uttarakhand, they have entered into the system of other forest types. Then comes the one of the most striking one. That is with the rhododendron, one of you are familiar with what we call it, France in this part of the country, the Himalayan ecosystem. And this is that this you can see this flower 4 years ago in area which is our month of April, May, and it lasts for June, but it flowered in the month of December, and it's been doing same still. So what is happening that those who are dependent, they can bother about that, they dependent for the syrup or the juice made from the flowers, they have to come down to month of December to gather the flowers and then do it. This is all right from the socio-economic viewpoint, but my concern is that by the time the flowers in December appear, their pollinators come out. Insects or those are cross-pollinate. As a result, in one of the beds that I studied, in the month of May, the whole all the flowers of rhododendron flowered in the month of January. They were not setting any seed because they were not introduced by insects. Besides, there was no wind to help them pollination. Yet another one, which is a state of Uttarakhand. There was the state flower, rhododendron, the state fruit, the kaffal. And kaffal, I must tell you, there is a very famous saying, the kaffal pakyu, that there's a bird that speaks so that, like the kaffal pakyu. So it is also saying. But what I found in the month of April, there were some vendors who were selling this from uphill place of Uttarakhand. So this shows also one of the bioindicators of that. So I find this to be mentioned here. Then there is one, Texas, with which they are all familiar. So this also the growth pattern, distribution, and abundance respond to changes in temperature, precipitation, and soil moisture. Right, and lichens, I believe they are great indicators of climate change, when right from pollution to the temperature to humidity, and then the freshwater fish. This is one of the most important subjects that comes here, which speaks about how the freshwater fish is also impacted by change. And nature, quality, all matters. And the next is more wonderful to see our snow leopard throughout the Himalayas. There, as you can see, this is in Himalayas, considered to be the apex predator, and population is changing fast and resilience. And then the studies that 2 years ago regarding the butterflies occurrence in oak. So this also speaks about the sensitivity of butterflies. It has been found that while there should have been the 211 species recorded from the oak forest of the microhabitat of Masuri Hills or Nainital Hills, 60, now we find 61 out of 211. So this also is a matter of great concern, as you can see here. The next is soil microorganism. So, changes in soil microbial communities, and it remains the subject of further studies into greater details. And then I come to the diverse stage of Himalayan ecosystem briefly. So first of all, being from the forest and forestry background, I should say that we have got the subtropical forest down to alpine tundra, highest elevation, low vegetation like and Monsoon. They all come under this. So there are, in fact, I'd say there are as many as 10 different Himalayan ecosystem, and each of them is depicting some kind or other of the changes in the climate, as a microclimate, a microhabitat, and you can see here, this was freshwater ecosystem, river, lakes, wetlands, deserts, grasslands, cultivated landscapes. Cultivated landscape is also the most important, agricultural ecosystem with coming up in the years 17 or 18 climatic regions, and they have the diverse crops typical of that particular climate. Now I come to the next brief about the Himalayan ecosystem regarding services, and that reduces the impacts of climate change. So, as we see here in the Arunachal Pradesh, this is from a village of my student. Listed. You can see water security, food security, home settlements, biodiversity, and economy, and we could see to also reduce the impacts of this. Now, preserving and restoring the exclusive for wetting this. Then I come to another diverse Himalayan ecosystem, and as you can see here, and that becomes the most important in terms of the environment. And here you can see the carbon sequestration, absorb carbon dioxide, leakage. And it's so that's most recent what we are working upon about the carbon sequestration by the bamboos. Now the work has been done in the place, but in the Himalayan region we have got naturally occurring and by plantation also, but not to great extent. But it shows which is 440 bamboo groves can as much as 10 to 15 hectares of carbon. So this becomes one of the most important carbon compensation. Also the most important component is a separate subject. More in detail, water regulation is one of the most important things, and then prevent floods and drought. That we all need to know. And what is the most important that I do find here of say about the soil erosion prevention besides water prevention. This is what do you speak about the bamboo as effective carbon sequester, and you just 13 to 19 ton carbon per hectare, 20 to 30 hectare effective carbon. So one of the one. And then I come to weather pattern regulation. This is diverse ecosystem. Actually, you can see here weather pattern regulation, balancing local weather patterns, moderate precipitation, extreme temperature, biodiversity conversion, and what is most important, natural barriers, protect extreme weather events. Although it comes with the concern about the but I find species of flora and fauna they are contained at what we say endemic, because of the natural barriers at the mountain ecosystem. All levels, or all different types of ecosystem they have. I will consider them as a natural barrier. Next come soil carbon is so, that is soil carbon storage in the atmosphere. Carbon actually we have we have not done work on SFC, the soil carbon, very intensively, but I understand that this is one of the most important component of that, where we define that how the soil is, absorbing the carbon. Of course, flood control we do know, not. Well, let me see the time. Oh, yes. About 12 minutes, I'll slightly fast. And the drought tolerance and the climate regulations. And here we find the adaptation. We take the Himalayan ecosystem. I have two things to speak about: mitigation studies, and the same one, natural ecosystem to enhance the resilience. And what's this concern about ecosystem, sustainable agriculture practices, promote climate resilient agriculture, agroforestry, and then comes here the renewable energy. That is what we do find here. As you can see here, this let me see. You can see here transition to methods, so like solar and wind, as the picture itself depicts how the green and climate resilient agriculture comes. Next is what we go to the climate smart water management, and it becomes one of the most important to implement efficient water use and management practices, and then community-based initiatives, Himalayas unique ecosystem and cultures that face significant threats from climate change that we all do know, right from beyond the carrying capacity for tourism, and also that also comes at this. And what I do understand that there is required to be a collaborative effort here to address challenges for keeping in the research and sustainable practices. And what are those sustainable practices? Let me see. You can see here. This I'll be reduced the Himalayas for the ability to climate change, support ecosystem resilience, sustainable development. Agroforest system, so integrating trees. This is what I do understand. The practice is sustainable, and this can also, the forest is the most important SFM, sustainable forest management aspect too, in which agroforestry is one of the most important. Of course, organic farming also comes in one of the most important components. Next, we come to the conservation agriculture, and they are implementing practices like no tillage or reduced till farming, cover crops and crop rotation to enhance soil health. So this becomes one of the most important one, because ICRS for the department also being as how we can avoid getting those tillers cut off and then burn it to cause the smoke and all. So that is the notice that has been successful in case of pilot trials in several parts of India by agriculture scientists, and it becomes one of the most important ways. The reduced till farming cover this, and then sustainable livestock, additional rotation. Rotational becomes one of the most important range land management. Microhabitat level. Manure management is also one there. Of course, then comes ecotourism. Ecotourism, there what I like to say the most important is responsible tourism practices that support local communities, conserve natural resources, and reduce one of the most important. And then comes this is renewable energy sources. So this is you can just see here in the solar power policy of Uttarakhand state government. There we have the like this, and then I learned that several of the industries who want to develop some industries, they are very much concerned with the state develop state with renewable energy that comes from solar, wind, and all, and it covers one of the most important that is what is carbon credit system. So if you have the more credit card, you are permitted for do that. So anyway, but yes, but and the sustainable water management, and Dr. Pawar knows very well in Himachal Pradesh. We have the traditional system, Dhara, Naula, Gadera, Kul, traditional irrigation. Anyways, they have to be further encouraged to do this, and this becomes one of the most important one. And I come to what is deforestation, then climate resilient power system management. And this is the most information that I got. The ASEAN Asian Development Bank, ADB approved $200 million loan to improve the quality, the efficiency and reliability of power supply in Uttarakhand, India, and empower women, self-help groups. That's important. Climate resilience. And let me your urban planning focus. From temperature to climate resilience, and then urban heat island to security. They all becomes one of the most important urban planning. In true sense, we see city is a smart city. It has to be climate resistant smart city. And here, you see, now I've come towards the end of this, where I've just have kind of recommendation to any party, which I take it from the management priorities of education, and to those who are participants, they may have some features out of this. Of course, the collaboration is among local communities and stakeholder, sustainable forest management, and then conservation of high value and vulnerable ecosystems, and sustainable land use practices, and then this please give me some moment for this water resource management. What you see here are iconic feature of Sonam Wangchok, and this is very much important for all of us to know that it was created through a system of gravity pipes, and this is gravity for which transport water from high alpine sources using natural pressure of piped water to push into fountain, which is the pipes bottom. Winter temperature drops to -20 degrees Celsius, causing piped water to freeze in winter. So this becomes the source of the supply of water in Ladakh, Trans-Himalayan region. And then comes biodiversity. And one is more important for the interest point of and say, and others. This becomes a sustainable agriculture, and you can just read it up here. What is most important that I found that climate is smart infrastructure. Just see what is known as Kaat Kuni, Achal Pradesh, and other bars. This becomes the most part you look at this. 20th century and indigenous style of architecture called Kaat Kuni was prevalent, made with wood and stone in the past. The most important during the earthquakes, the channels did not budge. Even if the stones on one side of the structure shifted, the other side would fill them up. So you can see even this is one of the most important, I would call it climate smart structure, and that accounts for projected changes. I think I'll come to the end of my topic that you can see here. The research and development comes to the most important one, and community engagement and education, and what we working in the area of Roma, she'd come from Germany, and so with me, we students in the community work on the participatory rural appraisal. That several topics were taken. Then Bugyal Conservation Day has been declared in September by government of Uttarakhand. Those were all the meadows. And here I would like to say that Bangalore-based BioQuest group, since last year, they're taking up the strategic known goes by the name of BioQuest 2024, and it is connecting Prakriti, Sanskriti, and Azivapega, Rishabh, Biswas, and Shreya Sinha. They take up some, and we are waiting for the photographs. There's some naturalists, volunteers from Bengaluru and other adjoining areas are likely to come, and with the student participants and from the local communities, we are going to have a number of activities. And I like if any of participants here want to do, they can. This ends with my last on this. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity and for being kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Some participants had experienced their grievances, had expressed their grievances with issues on the audio.
Okay.
Some participants had issues with the audio. This was due to heavy rains, and I'd like to apologize for the technical issues. Thankfully, the recordings will have better quality audio, and we'll make sure that all participants and panelists have access to the same.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to invite the chair to share her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Meenu, and thank you, Professor Biswas. That was a fantastic account of what is happening in the Himalayan region. Those of us really south here, for us, it is truly something that we don't really catch up on a daily basis unless there's something big happening. So all the little details that you shared was fantastic, and you gave a very good overview of the history and the geography of the region. That was very helpful, and you walked us through the challenges and the many positive things also that's happening there. I had two questions. One was you mentioned about one species having been introduced there to beautify the region. I couldn't hear properly, so that was one issue. And now you mentioned that how it has kind of taken over. I just wanted to clarify if I heard properly. The second one was the fact that renewable energy is taking over everywhere and also in the Himalayan region, and particularly one slide where you showed the solar parks. That also reminded me of what is happening in my own state in the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary. I was just wondering if there have been any studies to understand the impact of solar parks on the fragile ecosystems of the Himalayan region, because we are seeing a lot of issues here in the south. Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I respond it?
Sure, please.
Yeah. First thing, that shrub, what is known as angel's trumpet. And angel's trumpet is a very beautiful flower, but it has got the drooping datura flower, if you have seen. But it's not datura. Datura is separate. I'd like to show, if possible, from my mobile, uh, the picture of this. I hope you'll be able to see here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can see here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Briefly, yeah.
yeah. So, so this is what we see here. This is in this particular site of the microhabitat. And now we have got some people of British India time, they have settled here. So from South America, they brought it and to beautify their garden with these angel the flowers. Um, and from there, it escaped from the garden, and on it was through as a waste of the garden. Then it was thrown. It started proliferating, and it entered into the cover of the whole plant has got a poisonous property. It flowers, the leaves, the animals, they cannot take it. So being tried for the several, which was a colleague of mine, my institute, he has assigned the topic to work for a biochar on this. But this is very fast taking up, at the particularly its root system. The root system is very proliferating. But if you remove it and throw it, it will take its, grow its root and develop. And I believe it would be next to lantana if it is not non-resident. I also feel sometimes complete. The sand I do brought path over my garden area, and my gardener, threw away those unwanted one. I find where he threw, they have started germinating it on the day before I got it removed and let them be here, not to burn even, because it has got the poisonous residues that will go to the microclimate. Then the another one that you said about solar panels, you are very much correct. But this issue I took up with those who are taking it, particularly the village like down here in Napel. They have got about I can say about half hectare of area where they have to put the panels, and that is all residing. So when I asked, I said, "What you have? Why you have permitted this to put these panels on this?" So those village people. They said we were more concerned about getting the electricity and then selling it to others, even to the state electricity board. We never went with the geomorphology of the geological formations of that. So this becomes one of the most important issue. And where they are doing it, they are doing more of, you can say, the semi-plain area. And I believe that the geological formation must be very stable there. But you can't say anything. But what is happening there, in order to have the electricity and to have money, very large areas under those rural communities, they are asking others to come and put the panels and all without understanding this, say, morphological features of the geology, soil and all. This becomes one of the most important issues. So next month I shall be again going, see whether because it has been raining for the past about 1.5 months very heavily. I have to see whether there is side and deep down it has been. Thank you for giving wonderful.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And I think on the whole, the talk is really opened up because we've heard a whole lot of other sessions where we've understood the local challenges in the context of climate change, and you've opened up this entire Himalayan region and given us the entire the landscape of the problem itself. And thank you so much. And I'll hand it back to Meenu for to take the questions from the participants, if any.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for providing such an enlightening session. The floor is now open for Q&A. Please put your questions in the Q&A box or raise your hand.
Yeah, there's one question by Jay, Dr. Jay.
We have a question from Dr. Jay Parvaji. Sir, what is your view on the political will in saving the Himalayas, considering the infrastructure development?
You mean political will?
Yes, sir.
That is most important. And political will, what I understand, is directly interrelated with those politicians whom I will say, if they are sons of the soil of that particular state or the country or the whole Himalayan region. If a politician comes from such area, he or she will definitely be concerned about the upliftment of Himalayan ecosystem and the communities, with keeping under consideration what they do eat and what they do. Even in Arunachal Pradesh, and one of the striking example is that of one honorable minister, I'll not name here. He went for participation in any environmental related cultural activities, socio-economic aspects, even the festivals where it concerns. Then in yet another case, another minister from another state of Northeast, for example, he takes anything. If it is of the plant that has got the fruit, but it has not been being sustainably used, brings on the Facebook, brings on the. I'm following him and others too, and this joins the political wing. So what I understand, even of the other states too, wherever there is a one thing is very much important in order to allure the community for um, putting some plantation or the growing orchards of some fruit yielding species and all, removing the natural fauna, all they're not leaving behind some relic of that particular micro ecosystem that is disastrous. So what I understand, even at the political sphere also, at the state level and also at the central level, there should be the complete, I would request Honorable Prime Minister to address on this particular aspect where all levels of politicians should, should know about what is going on there. Like um, from the solar system and all. Okay, you can give the money, you can give them, but you cannot have the oxygen to have it until you think of this. So until the political will is there, nothing is going to be successful. When the political will comes, there you find that in developed countries, they put the climate change as their manifesto. If it is not there, then so this is very much clear. The day the manifesto comes in among those parties, they say one of their system that we will reduce the carbon emission or we will do this much of conversion of those, then nothing seems possible. Thank you. I'm sorry I was slightly excited.
So the next question is a follow-up on the same. Is there anything to learn from Western countries or others witnessing the same, especially with the nuances of this bioindicators?
Yeah.
And also, is the UK government doing anything or the Himalayan states? And do they acknowledge the seriousness of the issue?
In fact, on the bioindicators of the climate change, not not even 15% work has started on it. But in even a country like Africa, they have converted certain structures. For example, in Nigeria, termite mounds, based on those, they have built without any AC system, 7-story shopping mall. And that is based on the whole lifestyle of termites. And every now and then there are indications are there. I must tell you, I try to find at each element. If you love birds, if the love birds are visiting your corridor, making the tweets, if they do not come for 1 week, it is bioindicating maybe of climate or maybe of their whole reproductive biology is changing. So there are indications, as I said to Chairman, Chairman ma'am of this session, about Angel's temple. We have the plants, but you know what has happened here? The plant in South America, they have the seed and the fruit, but Indian region they don't have because the pollinators are not there. I have found certain insects. They feed upon the pollens, but they do not carry the pollen to cross fertilize. And it is indicating that that plant has developed its root system to invade the area, thus impacting on the ecosystem. Even certain areas with waterways and all in South America and Australia and other, the same plant is creating havoc. So you find at every point there is indication against the climate and for the resilience of climate change.
So we had one more question from Atika Hassanji. So you had mentioned the issue of migration. How are the people planning around it, considering considering that the conditions can become worse in the future?
What I will say, for certain reason, the condition of migration may not go worse because government is very much concerned about this particular aspect. And for that reason, find even urbanites, or the people from the place, they are also working the great. In one ghost village I visited, I found there were none, but there were wall paintings, there were murals, and there were cultural tradition of Uttarakhand. They were all depicted. Then when I gathered from the another nearby village, I learned that So people from the place, they do come and organize different programs, keeping the sanctity of the area and plus what it used to be once upon a time. So that way, I interviewed some people, some young men who were working in Chandigarh. They said, I left 30,000 rupees my salary and came back here because I find I will have better prospect in time to come, where I will grow kiwi and the other avocado and all those plants. And then what they are more concerned about is they don't want to stay in those traditional houses. So the government may consider sooner or later that these houses, those who own those houses and are traditionally owned, may have some kind of infrastructure. They don't want keeping some houses for the heritage houses and all. So this will become very much important, and I'll say great reverse migration was during the Corona period. Thousands of young people. I was head of in Bangalore for 19 months, but I found many of those from cities. They went back. There was migration, and they joined government schemes for road making and for harvesting, pre-harvesting, post-harvesting. What is most important here is that what we require, those youth, they need to be given a solid promise that we'll go back, but what they have to start off with. Because now we find that the medical, for example, Himachal Pradesh is one example. We find the roads and all development there. But compared to that, plus is not there. We have in some places they have the good many crops and all. They should be given subsidy so that the youth can come up. And I find some of the youth, they have not migrated. But what they have done, they have developed their poly houses and all, involve the local communities to go for growing and flying it and sending to the local market and all. So now this information have not been projected. Look out this is a ghost village, but this was never a ghost village. This is the one which was one heaven of the predecessor we see. And those houses, each of the house has got the wealth of information, and that is required to be projected. And what it was said, the political will has to come over here. They, why not to go to a ghost village and have a micro assembly and have not a session on those? So that we'll see. And I will ask Rishabh of BioQuest, Bangalore-based BioQuest, to go and talk to one small micro site of such a ghost village to go for those. So from when people start coming to visit those villages or say for the migration वाला, they say अरे हमारे गांव में तो ये सब काम हो रहा हम जानते नहीं है. If I would have a small shop and all, I would have earned and all. So that kind of thing has to be done.
So, for the last question today, in Professor's vast experience, what implications does he find from the Himalayan or mountain regions to that of plains, plateau, or coastal regions with respect to climate change bioindicators?
You see, what is most important here, we need to integrate whatever the best practices and learn from the vast experiences. And what is most important there, if I take it for the sustainable tourism point of view, what I found in Kerala, they have those boats, houseboats, and houseboats has come up from the Kashmir, the Himalayan region, what we call houseboat, and they do it, and tourism point of view, it has become very much appreciated. Now in Uttarakhand also, they are turning out to be certain areas. What they have those features and all. What is required? The best of south or east has to be not replicated, integrated, and improved with the local source and involve those people. And whatever the indications are there, what I found, you- say, say for example, in Bangalore, where I stayed there in one apartment, there was lantana. And then lantana plants were cut and down and all, but none of them, seeds are falling, birds are eating those, but they did not germinate because they did not have the embryo. So, whereas here it is a different one. So what we then I studied in depth. I found the lantana being used in the landscaping of the shrubberies and all in certain um, you know, house complex. They are different. They don't set seed. They set seed only in South America where they come from originally. And several of those, what we do require, at each point there is some indication, and that could be the microclimate, microhabitat, and the macro approach. And this is one of the most important component. I find there are certain plants which were considered as the weed and were cut off, and we consider as a weed. But I find they are showing their face now, but the plant is very less. They have been reduced, and there are certain plants from south have been introduced in the gardens of north, but it has not gone to the people. So that becomes also one of the important components that we have to integrate that, and that is for the any species which can impact on the climate change. And say in Sikkim we have got 62 species of rhododendron, whereas we have got 5 species here, and there it is not impacting about the flowering in Sikkim, but it is impacting here. So there is something, there are certain species which indicate that they can be introduced there, and their flowering may coincide with the pollination biology of this plants here. Many of the plants of such a species of Himalayan region, introduced in Australia, New Zealand, and all, they have all changed their cycle. So, when it is fruiting here, they are flowering. Or where it is not without any flower and all, you'll find in Australia. And what is required, we have to transfer their gene and bring those materials here. So we cannot alter the climate change, but we can become resilient. Maybe they may have developed the genes for the past over 150 years in the British colonial time. Back to those areas, they will flower, and in December month doesn't matter. And like this, we need to exchange whatever the bioindication we to find other places and bring it to those places where we do require most garden ecosystem.
Thank you, sir, for your comprehensive and engaging talk. We hope to see you further IMPRI events as well.
Thank you very much, everybody.
So let's move on to our next session. I'm honored to invite Mr. Arjuna Seneviratne, Board Member, Climate Action Network of South Asia, Development Consultant Energy Forum of Sri Lanka, and Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI. Sir will guide us through the topic, designing holistic climate resilience projects and the implementation challenges. Case study, the GCF Knuckles project. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Meenu. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Bhargavi, and also thanks, Dr. Biswas. That was a very interesting talk. In fact, the Climate Action Network met just 4 days ago in Colombo, and one of the problems that we were discussing was that of the Himalayan ecosystem, and that's an apex problem. And until we solve that, and solve that well, I don't know to what extent any downstream interventions are going to be as impactful as we would like them to be. So I think, and it gave us a fairly deep understanding of the history of the area and what problems beset it. Thank you. So may I share my screen,
Of course, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Thank you. Okay. So the question actually reduces from our side. Okay, how do you, or how do we as a subcontinent look at building the resilience of communities and ecosystems in the face of the various and varied climate threats? And what I thought I'd do is to look at a project that is just about starting up in Sri Lanka, funded by the Green Climate Fund, called the Knuckles project. The Knuckles is actually a mountain range in Sri Lanka, and you can see on the picture a view of this that I shot about a year ago, which shows the ridges of the Knuckles mountain range, some part of it, which looks like the knuckles on a human face. So before we go into the actual programming of that or the design of that project, and try to unpack how holistic it was, I'd like to give you an idea of the actual dynamics of the region that I'm going to be discussing. And so let's move very quickly. So the Knuckles is actually part of the Central Hills, and the Knuckles Massif is on the top right-hand corner of that Central Hills. And the Central Hills has some of the richest and most diverse and dense green cover in the country. And it is our primary watershed. If you look at it, you will find that it is both the heart and the lungs, because it gives rise to 103 rivers that straddle the entire country, that radiate from the Central Hills. So anything that happens to that region is going to impact the water security of the entire island. So it is very, very important that this area is protected. And it is managed as well as it possibly can be. So in that sense, let's move forward. The Knuckles watershed is actually, you can see the watershed here and the mountain massive actually. And it is 760 meters to 1,900 meters in elevation. And what is unique about this area is that it is bioisolated. It is bioisolated because it does not connect to any major river basins or riverine systems. So because of that, there is that entire mountain range has created for itself a unique and very dense biodiversity with many, many point endemic species in the area. It is also very important because it gives 30% of the water to the largest river in the country, the Mahaveli River, as well as feeds the rivers on the northern sector of the country. So this area is actually a water fountain. And if it is damaged in any way, or if other external dependencies like climate or aggressive development damages the area, that will have significant and very negative repercussions for downstream communities. So there is a very unique thing about this area in that there is Sri Lanka has both has two monsoons and two intermonsoon rains. The first is the northeast monsoon, and the second is the southwestern monsoon. And these two, on both sides, they cause a sort of a pincer effect on the Central Hills. So usually when there's a monsoon hitting a mountain range, on the windward side, it is wet, and on the leeward side, it is comparatively drier. But because of the fact that it is hit by two monsoons on both sides, the Knuckles mountain range is generally wet all the time, and it used to be aseasonal in the sense that every single month there was at least 100 millimeters of rainfall in the region. So which meant that there were a lot of biodiversity, a lot of um, uh, different types of fauna and flora that actually thrived on that kind of environment. But the minute that that is damaged, what happens is that everything falls apart. Everything. Coupled with this monsoonal concern is the fact that the fauna and flora of the Knuckles mountain range is capable, it has developed the capability of massive levels of uh, capturing precipitation. In fact, in 1996, there was a study done that said that that mountain range captured 88.3 million cubic meters of water every year. Now, obviously, these things have changed over time, and we are in a less than tasty scenario now. I wouldn't say it's a terrible scenario. I would say it's getting bad, and it will probably get worse if something is not done. So this was a consideration when we were designing this particular project. And let's take a look at the problems that we have based on what we were looking at. A recent study that was done by Dr. Fernando over the last 8 months or so, we realized that this very small area, it's about 25,000 hectares, actually showed signs of 4 different climate zones. It's a very small area to have that much diversity in the way in which the climate behaves. And this meant that if we were going to treat that area, build the resilience of the people of that area for any reason whatsoever, we have to we have to recognize the complexity of the climate scenarios of that microregion. And if we don't recognize that, and if we don't respond to that, then we are going to be in a serious. What we are going to do is probably going to be counterproductive, if not have the opposite effect to the one intended. So that's one of the more serious issues that we were looking at. And this was actually known back in 2016 to 2018 when this project was actually designed. And the design of the project had to do with trying to address some of the problems that had to be taken care of in the region. So let us take a look at the changing scenario of the project landscape. What we have seen is that the green cover and the forest canopy has opened up. This has been due to very many reasons: development aggression on one side, climate change on the other, global warming, and this has resulted in a reduction in mist capture. Second, aseasonal scenarios are now moving towards seasonal scenarios. And when that happens, the biodiversity that was dependent on aseasonality is going to be severely threatened. And this actually includes critical floral cover, which designed itself to capture the mist, which means that water availability to the downstream communities is going to be impacted negatively by this change in the seasonality from aseasonal to seasonal. Next, of course, climate is a multiplier. Certainly, it is a driver, but it is also a multiplier. Um, and the multiplier effects of forest fires, development, and anthropogenic activity in those biodiversity hotspots has caused significant threat to the stability of those natural systems. I say it's a multiplier because anything that is bad in development is going to cause climate change, and climate change in turn makes the impact of anything bad worse. So another very important problem that we were seeing was that there was no or improper valuation of the ecosystem services. And there was relatively a weak mechanism in place to be able to quantify that and to provide payment for that to the people who are preserving those areas, sustaining those areas, regenerating those areas, and holistically and sustainably developing those areas. And that is why people, sometimes civil organizations, sometimes the government, would do sporadic, intermittent types of conservation activities which were um, largely actually they were mismanaged or misdirected or misguided, and they're marginal at best. Another problem that we saw was that the erosion from degraded lands in those areas. Those areas are very high mountain areas where there is a lot of tea. Uh, so, especially in the tea lands, this has resulted in uh, quite significant siltation of both the rivers as well as the tanks and ponds in those areas. And the upshot of that is that the sum total of water availability downstream has been compromised. So while the watershed itself has generally, even now, it has fairly good precipitation. The fact that the precipitation has reduced and the precipitation's movement, the water movement across from there towards the downstream communities has become compromised, has led to water stress for people downstream. Another final factor that we were looking at is that the increase in wind speeds has pretty much damaged the pollen during crucial growing times, as well as the pollinators also have had a problem. And this means that the total water availability also has been reduced because of the fact that the anabatic and katabatic actions across the mountains, across the inclines, has been disrupted, and that has disrupted the rainfall frequency as well as the rain should come in very, very gentle and long period rains, but they come in a very short period of time, just a few days, and it's torrential. And this does not allow for water conservation nor water usage dynamics, nor does it allow for us to be able to use that water effectively as the water migrates from the watershed to the downstream areas. So these are some of the problems that we were looking at. And all of them were actually pretty challenging. And so when we look at the project itself, you will see that down the green, blue, and light green areas are the areas where the knuckles is. And that area is where the treatment is going to be. And if that area is not treated, then all of the downstream communities in the northern part of the country are going to be compromised. This I already told you, and this is what we are looking at redressing and responding to within the project. Now, when you look at this, you might think that the area is now, it was beautiful before, and now it is in a damaged and degraded state. That is true. But still for all, I'd like to give you a few pictures that show that it is not that bad. Here you can see the forest mosaic. You can see the thickness of the cloud cover. The only point is that the thickness of the cloud cover, which was there every day for 365 days, is now no longer there every day. It is there on only a part of the year, not all of the year. And you can see on the top left-hand corners, some of the flora has these thin tendrils on it, which are the tendrils that actually capture mist and then drop it down onto the ground and then moves that into the water. So the carapace and the canopy are still strong, but they are in the process of being damaged. They are in the process of becoming lesser. The canopy is becoming less and less dense. And these are the ones that these are the problems that I told you about. If you look at the point endemics, these are all point endemics, flora and fauna that exist in that area. And if you look at the water, I'm just giving you a series of waterfalls in that area. But if you look at the hydrology is still comparatively strong. The point that we have to consider here is that unless we do something to make sure that these water bodies are preserved, that the water volumes are increased, that the silk nodes are decreased, we will have a serious problem 10 years from now. And let us not forget, finally, the fact that the area is a mosaic. The forest mosaic itself contains people. They have cash crops such as cardamoms, which are being grown inside the conservation areas, which is a serious problem. They have pepper. They have other spices like cloves, vegetables that are very unique in taste because of the way it is grown in those areas. But there is a disconnect here that we have seen between human systems and natural systems, and the harmony or the balance between human systems and environmental systems have been compromised. So our key ask here was to, when we were designing the project, was to think, how do we manage all of these issues? How do we manage the siltation? How do we manage the loss of green cover? How do we manage the livelihoods of the people in those regions? How do we manage the forest mosaic? How do we manage the biodiversity? How do we manage the water volumes? And this is the point at which the project design becomes really good, because it did not look at only one part of the problem. We generally tend to look at one part of the problem because of various reasons, maybe financial, maybe because of the policies of the government, or maybe if it's a NGO, the policies of a donor, and so on and so forth. So we restrict it to small segments of the problem. While this is all right, it doesn't really give a body blow to the problem itself, because the problem is larger than any segment of the problem. So when we were designing this, we looked at the climate science behind this, and how we looked at how do you build the resilience of the people of those areas. And the key question that we asked ourselves is this: if this is a water issue, if we increase the water volumes, water availability, and the water quality of upstream communities, then the downstream communities would be less stressed on the waterfront. And this would mean that any negative impact of climate could be better dealt with by the downstream communities. The upstream communities are thin because of the very nature of the terrain. It's fractured. It is mountainous in certain regions. It is forested in other regions. So the areas in which human settlements can occur in those areas are along the river basins. And those are also comparatively smaller. So we have roughly about 80,000 families in that entire terrain, whereas the downstream community that is impacted by the water availability in these regions with 80,000 families is about 300,000 families. So it's about 3 times more. So when we were designing the project, we looked at the climate science. And I will just give you an idea of of the 5 pillars that we looked at in terms of resilience building. The first is improving the adaptive capacity of society, and the second is improving the coping capacity, the adaptive capacity. How well can a society change itself to respond to external threats like climate? Improving the coping capacity of a watershed is the second part. And the coping capacity of a watershed is, I mean, this is probably old hat to some of you, but the coping capacity is how well can a community or an ecosystem deal with the threats that it has to that it must respond to from outside of its own heterogeneous system. The third is what we call improving the recovery or rebound capacity. Rebound capacity is more to do with energy, actually. But in this case, we're looking at recovery when it comes to adaptation and resilience building of communities. And rebound capacity actually means how well can a community move quickly after it has been hit by a disaster to recover itself. That is level 2. Level 1 is adaptive capacity and coping capacity. Those are the level 1 climate resilience factors. Level 2 is the recovery capacity. Level 3 is improving the threshold capacity of societies and ecosystems. That is, to what extent can this society or this ecosystem or this intermesh of human and natural systems not be affected by external threats like climate. And finally, the fourth level is the transformative capacity of the communities and ecosystems, where they can transform themselves and be much more capable under all different types, shades, and colors of climate threats to be able to still be resilient. So these are the five. All of these, once we do this, we have what we call, it's a cyclic thing, and all of these together is an autonomous cycle of continuous improvement, as opposed to a cycle of continuous destruction, which is what happens when we let climate be and we just continue with BAU scenarios and allow everything to slide, which is what we have been doing for a long, long time. So in terms of these five, the project was designed to take care of every single one of these facets. And I think it's a tall order. I'm just going to share with you a slide on that. And this gives you how the project is going to look at improving the various types of capacities that are required for a total improvement of resilience. And in the first case, we were looking at improving the adaptive capacity and the coping capacity of the watershed. And the results that we wanted there was to improve land and water management in upstream catchments to safeguard production of environmental goods and services. So if the upstream catchment is looked after, then the environmental goods and the environmental services will be improved. The second of those outputs under those two categories was to make sure that there was sustainable climate resilient primary production in the upstream catchment areas and the downstream irrigated agricultural areas. Downstream is not actually, there are no catchments, there is flat land. So it's water fed to those areas from the knuckles that will irrigate those lands. So we need to look at intensification and management of climate resilient primary production. That means rice on one side, smallholders on another side, and plantations on a third side. Next, to improve the recovery or rebound capacity of societies, we had to make sure that there was an upgrade and an improvement and a greater efficiency of green value chains. And that is something that has not actually been addressed in those areas. We were not looking, most environmentalists generally look at conservation, most sociologists look at supply, sometimes they look at demand also. But there is no managed intermesh of ecologies, biodiversities, systems that are natural, and systems that are human, and integrating all of these into chains or networks. We don't actually call them chains these days, we call them value networks that will optimize and regenerate the landscape and the dynamic of the human beings and the natural systems that live in those areas, taking into consideration both the biotic and the abiotic components of the system. Next, we were looking at improving the threshold capacity of societies. And this we were going to do by initiating a payment for ecosystem services. This was a system that was introduced to the world maybe I think 20 years ago by Sri Lankan scientists, and now it has taken on significance across the world. And we are looking actually at a ecological economy, or an EE, as opposed to a cash-based economy per se. The ecological economy of the world has been generally estimated, I think it was like 2011, 2012, it was estimated at 147 trillion US dollars, which is massive compared to the current mainstream economy. We have about $80 million of usable, no, of cash, of which about 60 to 65 million is usable. We have about a 7 million US dollars per minute increase in public debt across the world. The total global debt is 215 trillion US dollars, which is 3 times the total amount of money there is to cover it, which means there is no possibility of wealth creation. There is only a possibility of debt creation in this type of scenarios. So in that type of scenario, this type of world, it may do us well to rethink our mainstream idea of what an economy is. In Sinhala, we have a term for economics that is artikaya. Artikaya means artakriya, meaningful action. I think it's a Sanskrit word, artakriya, meaningful action. And this is where we want to go with our project, to make sure that people understand this. And finally, we get to improving at level 4 of climate resilience, increasing the transformative capabilities. And there, transformation is one of the hardest things to do. We must transform the mindsets of the communities living in those areas. We have to transform their technological capabilities. We have to transform the capabilities and capacities and knowledge and commitment and influencing mechanisms of the state agencies, civil actors, non-state actors. And once we have done that, we have created the basic necessary foundation or infrastructure to be able to manage any future threats that occur because of climate or other aggravating factors. So this generally is the plan. I will share this whole thing with the actual, it's very small, I believe, on your screen, so you can't see too much of this. I will share this particular presentation with the participants through Minu and Dr. Arjun, and you can take a look at this later if you like to. All right. So 18 tasks were created. 18 tasks that were supposed to be implemented by 25 state agencies, civil actors, researchers, research agencies. Now I will take you over to the challenges. We know that holism is, now this is all holistic, right? The entire system is supposed to look at resilience building in terms of all 5 pillars. But holism is much touted, but it's rarely understood. Mostly by researchers and state officials. State officials refuse to understand it because of the fact that their mandates are linear and narrowcast. Researchers refuse to understand it because their areas of expertise are also equally limiting or limited. And as I just told you, the project must work with at least 25 state agencies and approximately 135 experts in various areas, whether it is superfoods, agriculture, cash crops, spice crops, export crops, biodiversity, pollution, hydrology, meteorology, agrometeorology, and so on. Looking at that, it looks like a nightmare scenario. I'm sure that a lot of our participants and the panel who have been working on this tirelessly over years know how difficult it is to work with even one or two state agencies. Imagine trying to put together 25 of these, from the forest department to the wildlife department, agriculture, and so on. And we have an additional problem here. I do not know whether this is the same in India, in Nepal, and Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on. But our environment portfolio is fractured, and our agriculture portfolio is enormously fractured. So trying to get all of these people to work. So if there is an export agriculture crop, for example, you look at cardamoms, the Department of Export Agriculture has a mandate that says it can only look after 33 crops. Now, if you look at a home garden in the Knuckles region, the home garden in that region will have maybe 2 or 3 spice plants, maybe another 5 or 6 vegetables, and another 3 or 4 fruit. But if the fruit is looked after by one agency, the spices by another, and the third, vegetables, is looked after by a third agency, how do these people get together to improve this? Because the garden owner does not look at it in terms of the state fracture. It looks at it in terms of the holism of the garden. And so that is one of the problems. That is one of the many problems that the project is going to face. Importantly also, capturing citizen knowledge, local sciences, and mainstreaming them is tough, but it is vital. There are certain areas where we have seen, because of the high winds, pollinators are dying or they are destroyed. So what people have done is, they have, in certain areas, we have seen people growing a blanket, a cover of coffee, behind which they are growing their actual vegetables. So they're sacrificing the coffee crop in order to be able to get the vegetable crop in the middle. In other areas, we have seen where you take pepper, for example. If you take pepper requires, in August and September, it requires a drought for the plant to almost die. And that is why when the monsoon hits, that it shocks itself, because it has received a shock, it immediately starts fruiting. But if there is rainfall in August and September, what happens is that the plant sees no threat. So during the actual fruiting season, it doesn't have any yield at all. So it drops from, say, 100% as much as to 5% because of this. And some citizens have decided, all right, if the rains start in August, or there is unseasonable rain in August, they will immediately start pruning their trees, their vines. The reason there is very simple. They are giving the plant an external shock, not a natural shock of drought, but an external shock of cutting it down. So when the rains start, it still feels as if it needs to fruit. So these are the types of things that are not always visible to mainstream science, but the citizens know about this. In fact, a lot of the time, what we have found is that even though citizens are generally considered as beneficiaries, and citizens are considered generally, I'm saying, as being less aware of climate and its nuances in terms of the mainstream academics or the mainstream discourse, they are pretty well aware of what is happening, and because their lives depend on it, they are pretty well aware of how they should respond to that. They may not have the technology, they may not have the seed, they may not have the processes, but they know that they know what to do. So this is vital to capture. And finally, understanding climate responses must be slow, with much allowance made for stakeholders to transit from greed and gain-driven mindsets to a more shared and mutually advantageous mindset. And that is at least very difficult, if not actually impossible. When we designed this project, and I outlined this design to a team of experts through the climate lens, believe me, these are very smart people. Most of the mechanics of implementation through the climate lens went right over their heads. The reason why is because climate in itself is is something that is a little far removed from people. Just like, say, the benefit streams of a project is a little far removed from people. If we tell them, all right, you need to be able to reduce the total amount of agrotoxins in an area, they understand that. But understanding how the reduction in agrotoxins leads to adaptive capacity is not something that is always understood. So you have to remold or transmogrify the climate science to other channels of knowledge to make it more relevant to the immediate proximity of the mindsets of the people that are going to be working on this. Mind you, this is not important to some of the citizens. When we start talking to them about the holism of something, they understand it, they get it. When I start talking about holism to a State Department official or say a hydrologist, for example, not a hydrologist actually, but maybe say an engineer, that person finds it resistant. He not only finds it difficult to acquire, he feels as if he must resist or she must resist it. And this is a problem that we will be challenged with across the period of the project, which is 6 years. Next, finally, some of the positives. The design is extremely strong. The Green Climate Fund says this is one of the strongest designs, but it is also one of the most challenging designs. And we are all watching to see how this succeeds or fails in Sri Lanka, because we may not need to use some of those methods in other parts of the world. This is something that we have talked with them about, and they know all of this. They know the science. They know what resilience is all about. But when it comes to actually designing and programming and implementing something, there are so many unknown factors: the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity of actual real-time dynamics are so great that there is no way to actually predict the outcome of a project of this nature. So this is all up in the air, but it starts off as a positive with a very strong design. We also have some of the strongest transdisciplinary minds in the country who are offering their insights to the project. Even though we have like 135 experts here, they're all subject experts most of the time. We have 3 or 4 people who have been working on linked aspects of life as a science, that basically looking at the general mainstream science through the sociology of science. And because of that, they have far more a greater grasp of the nuancing, of the interplay between the various fields and branches of science that will be brought to bear on the project. Next, extremely strong, very firm, and understanding leadership at the top. We are very, very, very happy about that. The Secretary to the Ministry of Irrigation, the Additional Secretary, they are excellent people. Strategic engagement with the target communities is already being done. 25, 30 years of experience in those areas, and they are part of the project. So it is very easy for us to penetrate into the breadth of resources for that. It's already in place. We have so far, we have an election next week, but so far, the political engine of the country has left itself severely out of the project, its outcomes and its financial disbursements. This is an extremely good thing. And we have 6 years to do this, so they have sufficient time to make mistakes, learn from them, and adjust our engagement. And finally, digital transformation of the climate response together perhaps will form the general basis for being able to respond to extreme project level challenges, because we have the tools and we have the methods to be able to respond to those challenges. If we can respond to the challenges of the programming, then the programming will respond to the challenges of climate. because the programming was done based on the science of climate. And the science of climate didn't just look at mainstream science only, but also looked at the wider idea of knowledge across the communities, across the stakeholders, and across that terrain. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that presentation. Now, I'd like to invite the chair for her remarks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Minu. Thank you, Mr. Arjuna Seneviratne. That has been a fantastic presentation. Honestly, for me, it was something so positive because one, there have been so many people from very diverse fields who've been part of this. And thank you for walking us through the little bit of geography. It felt nice because it reminded me of my own little geography class, and I was also a geography teacher, so that the north
Okay, that's
yeah
excellent, actually. I didn't know that.
the northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon, which I used to teach children. I was just reminded of that was very interesting. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, so I was just wondering, it definitely sounds like a very challenging project. So if this project has reached out to so many diverse people and also the local communities, one, what kind of challenges did you all initially face? And I mean, I can understand when those of us from cities going to rural areas, and our language, our the kind of stuff we take there, it's not so easy to kind of convince them because there is so much of traditional knowledge already there, and many of them,
Absolutely.
the senior voices will say, oh, we've seen this, we've done that, we know how to do it. So how did you all bridge those gaps and challenges? How did you all iron it out? And another thing is, I was just wondering if any part of the IPCC report itself was directly useful in implementing or designing this project. Did it serve as a guide? Because to many of us, the IPCC report itself needs to be demystified and it has to be reinterpreted to many people. So in that context, I
Yeah.
had these two
On the
questions.
on the first question, Bhargavi, see, okay, I'll give you a little bit of history there. I am apparently, through no fault of my own, supposed to be managing this project. So I was assigned to the task after I just went there as an ICT expert. And that was like completely then diametrically opposite to everything I was speaking about today. And when I was brought to the table, and that was the fact that I had been working on the ground for years with the people in the Knuckles area. And in fact, from 2020 to 2022, what I did was, to answer your first question, was what I did was I created a system of actually trapping and capturing citizen knowledge and citizen history called the scorecard, that is like the strategic commons organization, regeneration and enhancement, community affirmation of realities and dynamics. So we brought all of the communities of, and this was done on river basins, not in terms of geographies. So because when you look at a shared common like a big forest or a river, those don't follow administrative boundaries or provinces or whatever. They follow their own logic of nature, and the people who gravitate to that, they too follow that same thing. Otherwise, they cannot live. So the dynamics of upstream and downstream communities, their conflicts, their issues and problems, and so on, are actually based on this shared common. So we brought all of the people, and we brought people from who actually the more important people to us were those who were plus 70
Okay,
because they knew the history. They knew how this thing has changed.
exactly.
They knew how it has changed. They knew why it had changed. And when we brought these people together, magic happened. Because they, for the first time, were given a voice in the in a forum where there were younger generations, 2-3 generations young. And the younger people suddenly realized, oh my God, we should have listened to these people. And
Very true.
suddenly, everybody started to change the way they were thinking. And we normally give the timers the first voice because it was his life or her life. They generally are a little bit more forgiving and they will just let it go. But if we give them the first voice, the people who are then going to speak on their own experiences will color their thinking very quickly in terms of what the older people are saying and say, oh yeah, the mist was there 20 years ago. We were not even born then. But now we understand what this uncle is saying or this auntie is saying because we see now that our crop yields and our water availability has dropped, and now we know the reason. But they didn't know that before. So these are the types of things that we captured through this and we quantified it. And the outcome of that quantification was very, very important. What we wanted to do was to decide whether or not an intervention should be done or shouldn't be done. That was the most important thing. The outcome of this knowledge, well, this massive upstreaming of citizen knowledge and awareness and experience, was that our thinking was definitely and positively colored by them in terms of whether we should, whether we shouldn't. And in most cases, we found we shouldn't. There was, or we should modify what we were going to say in terms of the knowledge that we acquired. Or third, and that was the most important, go in an entirely another direction, go back to the drawing board, get this knowledge, and then start off again. So when we really tried to go into the programming behind the project itself, we used that type of system to be able to inform us exactly how the programming is going to. The project is there, but the programming was severely informed, massively informed by what the AR6. AR6, as you rightly pointed out, is, unless it is you or me, I don't think even 0.00001% of the people will read it. And even those who read the smaller versions for the policymakers, even they would find it difficult. We know what is the difference between SSPs and RSPs and so on. What is this? This is all, it is so far removed, just like climate science. It's just so far removed that you can't actually pull that in. But what we are looking at is two things we were looking at in terms of AR6 that were very, very important. Actually, AR6 and COP28. AR6 for the first time mentioned colonialism
Okay.
as a driver of climate. So we were looking at that and factoring that into the program. And number two, for the first time at COP28, they tied change to agriculture and the impacts of climate on agriculture. So those are the two things that we brought in. It just started up, I think it was in October last year. And we were just looking at the outcomes of that. And I was thinking, wow, they finally got that done. So we were looking at that aspect of it purely from adaptation and resilience. So those were factored into the programming. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah.
Or do you need
Thank you.
anything more?
I was also
Okay.
wondering in terms of the traditional livelihoods as part of this project, if you can
Right.
speak a little bit about it, given that,
Yes.
across the world, it is these traditional livelihoods that is what is going to sustain us in the context of climate change. How did you all build that into this project?
Okay. There are three actually aspects of this. One is that the people in that area were traditionally, uh, maybe like 30% of them, were cultivating heirloom seeds, especially for rice, and they were not using any agrochemicals. So because of the elevation and the difficulty of transport and so on and so forth, they were actually having to use water buffalo for their killing and so on and so forth. Not because it was something that they wanted to do, but simply because the motorized vehicles couldn't get to the areas. So it's only a cow or bull that water buffalo that remote that as part of the mainstream as well, and saying, look, guys, if they can do it there without any agrotoxins and they can use natural, labor and animal labor to do this, why can't you? I mean, they're doing it just fine. What is your problem? Right? And so that was one of the areas. Second was that from the medical point of view, in that area, there are actually four local systems, indigenous systems that that are actually very, very important to the general health, not only of the people of the region, but the ecosystem of the region. So the health practitioners had four different types. One was called Siddha, one was called Hela, one was called traditional, one was called Ayurveda. So all four. So Ayurveda means science of life. That is the Indian one. That is also there here. But these other three as well. So Siddha is more to do with magic and stuff like that. So they do weird things, which they don't even tell us. We are not privy to that. But suddenly you find that that forest is a little bit healthier today than it was yesterday, and your guy came and did something here, and now everything is fine. So we are not trying to unpack that and trying to figure out what the science is. We are just simply saying that the darn thing works. So why don't we just make sure that that guy goes and does that in every other place that he wants to do it, and to give him the enabling environment to do that. So that's the second thing. The third is that we will. This is actually not. This is actually a do no harm kind of thing. The area is actually steeped in the culture of Ravana, the Ravana. So they are actually worshippers of Ravana. Yeah, and they also they say there are places that they insist that this is where he landed his helicopter or whatever it is, the thing that he went to India in to capture Sita. And so they have this culture. The thing from our side is not to tell them, hey, that is the driver for them. So what we do is we try to be very careful that our mainstream science ideas does not at any moment or at any place clash with
Very
their
true.
understanding of the rhythm of life. So these are very fine things. I mean, I can talk this nonsense to you all, until tomorrow. But the reality of it is that when we go into those areas, there will be the detractors and then there will be the supporters of this type of thinking. And the detractors are far more powerful than the supporters of those systems. So, one of the challenges that I'm facing is to try to get the detractors to take a step back, take a beat, step down, let it be, let it go. Don't try to push your thinking on
Right,
another set of people who have been thinking like this for 3 centuries, for crying out loud.
right.
What is your parachuted idea like in their heads? Most times, ego, uh, desire to prove themselves to uh, mainstream society, to their job, to their consultancy, makes them want to do what they want to do. So, from our side, as the manager of the project, one of my key challenges is to make sure that that does not damage the community. Believe me, I'm the first to admit I have, in certain areas, it's options by context all the time, but I have no clue in certain areas. I have absolutely no clue how I'm going to do this because the dynamics are so complex. And if I were to sit in Colombo and try to remote that, I'm going to end up with disaster. So I'm going to be spending inordinate amount of time up in the mountains trying to make sure that not even if things don't go right, make sure that things don't go wrong because of the
Right.
project.
Correct. Yeah, very
Does that
true.
answer your question?
Very true. Thank you so much. I think that has been a fantastic presentation. Like I said, it gives a lot of hope of how things can be addressed in a very holistic way, and this has been that classic example where people of all hats have come together, and the challenges have been looked at the intersection of a whole lot of issues, and also upholding the rights of the traditional people, understanding many of the cultural sensitivities there. I think it's a great example. It'll be wonderful, in addition to your presentation, if you can share the paper or any other written material that is there,
I can
because
share the project. Yes, I will
yes,
share the
because
project document. I will
right.
share the presentation in its full, and I will also share some of the other areas because I'm a very fortunate person in many ways. Not only I'm a scientist on one side, anthropology, ICT, mathematics, blah blah, but also from a young age, I was I was taught by the Adivasis,
Oh, how lovely.
which is why I have this long hair because the Adivasis grow their hair. So from a very young age, and also from South India because that's where my kurtas come. So I wear Indian dress and I talk the Turkey of the Adivasis while being a scientist. So I have this mesh which allows me to think a little bit kinder about all these
All
things
these.
and
Right.
more forgivingly. So perhaps that is why they made me the project manager of this. I don't know, but I'm sure, Bhargav, you understand. When you take something like this on at our age, or my age, not your age, but my age, you're actually saying you're going to be taking a pass on life for yourself. You're going to take a pass on what you can gain for you. You have to work 20, 28 hours of the day, which means that you sleep once every 2 days, you have 3 meals once every 2 days, you have a bath once every 2 days in order to be able to make sure that nothing goes wrong. That is a challenge that I am not too sure. I'm not too sure I have the energy for. The spirit indeed is willing, but is my body capable of that? I think, Bhargavi, I will have to find this out over the next year or two. If I'm out of this altogether, that's because I just couldn't take it physically. Because it's going to be so demanding to do this type of thing and do it right.
Right.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
share
you for
everything I have
that.
to share.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Wishing
Thank you very much.
you the very best, and may your tribe
Thank you.
increase, because that is what this
Thank you,
planet
sir. Thank you,
eventually
ma'am.
needs.
Thank you.
Uh,
Appreciate that. We are all part
thank,
of that same tribe, I think. I know, listening to your lecture on green grabbing, I was like, wow, geez, I can't believe this is happening. Um, so thanks for that. I mean, there was such a lot of concern on my side because this is part of
right.
our
Yeah.
peoples, our collective peoples. And this is, since I go to India so often and Nepal so often, it's almost like I mean, somebody asked are you, somebody said, we'll let the foreign, I'm not foreign here. I'm part of this country. And so thank you for all of that as well from your side. It was very, 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 very enlightening for me. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. So over to Meenu to take the questions from participants now. I see that there is one, two in the chat box already. Over to you,
Okay.
Meenu.
And participants can add their questions to the Q&A box. So the first question is by Induji. Sir, please share on the replicability of such projects and its financials.
The reputability, right?
Replicability.
The
Replicability.
replicability. All right. Okay. The finance was 50 million US dollars, right? So the 50 million US dollars is split between three components. One is for sustainable land management. The second is for payment for ecosystem services. And third is for capacity building. So the narrative goes 1, 2, 3, but the implementation goes 3, 2, 1. And each of these components has a specific amount of cash that has been. Cash allocations will be on our website in about a week. And I will share the link. The minute that the thing is active, you will see what the budget allocations look like. When it comes to replicability, look at it. What we are doing is we are testing method. Testing method is opposed to say testing for a best practice. A best practice is something that is very specific to a microgeography. A lesson learned is something that is very specific to a microgeography. but a method. For example, utilization of the scorecard, or the utilization of the land of the land degradation sustainability as a land degradation surveillance framework, LDSF, which we are using in that area, or the utilization of river basin approaches to hydrological considerations of downstream communities by upstream management. There's some method. The integration of the dynamics of upstream and downstream communities, some method. We are testing methods, and those methods, if they are successful, will be replicable across all parts of the world. You will never be able to replicate the actual implementation strategy for the knuckles, because that is unique to the knuckles. But the method that we use to come to or arrive at that particular solution for the knuckles is a method, and that you can, and you certainly will, be able to apply anywhere in the world. So this is what we are doing. So we are working with both local and international organizations. So one of the organizations that are working with us is the International Council for Research in Agroforestry, ICRAF. And ICRAF has brought this thing called the LDSF, say, for example, the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework. This has been tested in Kenya, it has been tested in Nepal, it has been tested in Puerto Rico, it has been in various places in the world. And it is being used here because it has been tested across the world, which means that the method is replicable, but it is unique to the actuality of Sri Lanka. So the soil spectroscopy analysis, the microbiome analysis is unique to Sri Lanka, but the method of looking at the degradation is replicable anywhere. Similarly, the score is a method that is used here, but its system is replicable anywhere. So what I would suggest is that you use those methods and tailor them to suit for climate in terms of climate, not necessarily the taking this entire project and then parking it somewhere else. It does not work. Do I answer your question?
So just to follow up on that, both Sri Lanka and India are
Right.
partners in
Yes.
CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Do you think there's a scope for leveraging
Yes.
multilateral partnerships in addressing common yet localized challenges? Or is it likely to get mired in bureaucratic procedures and partisan interests?
This is a problem that we have been grappling with for about 15, 20 years now. Since SARC came about, we've been grappling with the problem of trying to do this. Like even like last week, we were just, a lot of us think that, say, that regional cooperation, regional integration is only for the conference room. We believe, rightly or wrongly, that uh, SARC is either a lame horse at best or a dead horse at worst. It is not able to move. We think this. However, having said that, the instruments for regional cooperation are present. It is the political will that is required to drive that cooperation to positive levels. Sadly and unfortunately, the volatility of the political economy of this entire region is such that these things generally tend to take a back, they're put on the back burner, or they take, they're of secondary priority or tertiary priority, which is why it doesn't actually get into the mainstream discussion, the mainstream discourse. We don't find 10, 15 articles in the newspapers talking about these issues. We only see, like, all right, there's an election going on in Sri Lanka, or there's a problem in West Bengal right now, or it's just pure politics, nothing to do with the reality of what these leaders are supposed to do to make sure that this region works together. I think India has this. See, it's not just one body or one system or one strategy that is under attack or threat, but the entire idea subcontinental cooperation that it has a problem. So, and frankly, I'm not too sure. I can only say good luck to us, but I am not too hopeful. I mean, I will, I will look for it, but I don't do that with too much hope, because as far as regional cooperation goes, unfortunately, I have lost that hope.
So just
Sorry.
one more question. I'm just asking this because it's in the news right now. You had talked about four climatic zones on the Knuckles
Hmm.
Range. How
Correct.
do global events such as ENSO extremes like La Nina
Yes.
impact these
Yes.
zones? And is the
Yes.
impact felt differently in each zones by their respective inhabitants
Okay.
and communities?
So, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's important. I didn't actually mention that, but see, the rainfall was the primary indicator that was used to understand those climatic zones. But if you look at the ENSO teleconnects and you look at the Indian Ocean dipole, and plus there are two other teleconnects which we are not really sure how they behave. One, more importantly, is right, like much more immediately important, is the fact that there were two reservoirs built over a period of like 3 years, and because of the speed at which those two reservoirs were built, the hydrology of the entire terrain was compromised and changed. So the The reservoirs were built, say, further downstream, but the teleconnect made sure that there was excessive water in certain areas of the knuckles which shouldn't have been there. And that caused damage to certain areas of the knuckles, especially in terms of the tea, especially in terms of the pepper, and so on and so forth. So those teleconnects also were there. And the second, and this is actually the long-term, more important one, is that of the loss of snowfall in the Himalayas. That is something that we haven't been able to unpack. We have, with climate is so complex that the science itself is largely, how can I say this, despite AR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all of that, it is largely um, uh, sort of surmise conjecture in many ways. There are certain definite things that we have been able to find out, but if you take the actual global phenomenon of climate change, trying to predict where something is going to happen because of a certain other set of parameters is, we can go trend wise, but actually nailing it down is a very, very difficult task. So let us see, like, the ENSO connects, like right now, the Indian Ocean dipole and the ENSO, the transition from La Nina to El Nino is, and then a little micro shift back to La Nina in Sri Lanka has caused, in the 2024, a tremendous surge in the availability of water because of the increase in precipitation. This has played havoc across not only the Knuckles region or the central hills, but the entire country, because we can't actually cultivate because the rainfall is so high. But trying to figure out whether this is because of the micro El Nino, or whether this is something to do with IOD, or whether this is part of some other kind of regional climate interference. Oh, I am not too sure even the scientists are going to be brave enough to try to tie that down. They're certainly going to impact. But if I were to be asked, can you tie this down and say, all right, this is because of El Nino, this is because of IOD, this is because of the reservoir teleconnect? My friend, I will not be able to say that, and I don't think any scientist in this country or anywhere in the region will be able to say that. We can say these are happening, and these are influences. These are external dependencies. This is what climate is all about. The unpredictability, the uncertainty principle is the most important factor. We must, like, this is, I'm just speaking to you from mathematics, right? In mathematics, real true mathematics, the uncertainty principle is the principle. The knowledge that we do not know is the most important. and that is extremely and specifically applicable to climate change. If you like, look at the arguments between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr in 1929 at the Solvay conference. And Albert Einstein was trying to say that 1 + 1 is equal to 2, and Niels Bohr was saying, hey, you got it all wrong. What is 1, what is 2, and what is 1 + 1? Uncertainty principle. So they were fighting each other. At some point, Niels Bohr pushes, literally, argumentatively, scientifically, pushes Einstein against the wall. At which point, Einstein says, he just blurts out, God does not cast, God casts the die, not the dice. All right? First, the problem is, how come Einstein, when he's pushed against the wall, has forgotten all his science and goes to God? Number two, as Niels Bohr succinctly points out to him, Albert, don't try to tell God what to do. Einstein leaves the Solvay conference, never to return. Niels Bohr is not that known. Einstein is known, but Niels Bohr got it right. Einstein didn't get it completely right. The uncertainty is what we must deal with on a day-to-day basis. It will become even more uncertain now. And this is especially true with the global crises, the pollution crisis, the climate crisis, the water crisis, the financial crisis, the conflict crisis, the food crisis, and also the intelligence crisis, because right now there's a whole big hoo-ha going on about AI and the negative impacts of that and the positive impacts of this and so on. And so all of these things lead to a sum total human condition and human existence that I think we must all appreciate is largely a head scratcher. I know that when we walk out of these rooms, we are actually faced with major uncertainty outside. Climate is no different. And as long as we recognize that, our responses will be more thoughtful and our responses will be more careful. Does that answer your question, my friend? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any more questions? Seeing as there are none, we'd like to thank you. Thank you, sir, for an insightful and engaging talk with us. Participants, thank you all. And we look forward to learning from you further IMPRI events as well. Now, I'd like to invite the chair to share her closing remarks.
Thank you, Meenu, and I would like to thank both our speakers today because they've been enlightening, starting from the Himalayas and understanding what's happening in Sri Lanka with two different mountain ranges, if I can say. It's been a fantastic session and a lot of food for thought for the weekend. So with that, I would like to thank everybody and our speakers particularly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bhargavi. Thank you, Dr. Biswas. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Meena. I will take your leave. Thank you, everyone who participated. Thanks.
So with the permission of the chair, we would now like to move forward with the formal vote of thanks. As we come to the end of the sessions for week 7 of understanding the nuances of climate change in the Indian subcontinent cohort 2.0, a 2-month immersive online introductory certificate training course as part of our online international monsoon school program. I, Meenu, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for today's session, Professor Biswas ji and Mr. Arjuna Seneviratne ji, for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from their expertise. We thank all our participants for raising pertinent questions and actively participating in today's deliberation. And we look forward to welcoming you next week on September 21st for week 8 of this training course. The speakers for the next session are Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, lawyer and human rights activist in Goa, visiting senior fellow IMPRI, and Professor Rekha Niyanti, Professor, Department of Geography, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka, and visiting professor at IMPRI. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube, listening to us on our various podcasts, or reading our publications. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.